Hey everybody, I'm Bob Murdock with Evolve, and welcome to the Evolve Fireside Chat. My special guest today is George Ray. George is an expert in many things, but he's our guru when it comes to LED, and he's got something he really wants to bring out that's very important. It's a Novastar VMP 1.4.0. George, what's new in this software?
So, to begin with, VMP is Novastar's control platform for the COEX series processors.
Okay.
The current version is 1.2.3. 1.4 changes a whole host of menus, adds new functionality, new hierarchy to how shows are created. So I've got the simulator, if you will, the offline mode running here on my laptop.
Okay.
So to begin with, the first thing is Novastar has some new hardware, the MX2000 and the MX6000 processor. So if I pull up on my laptop and I go Add Device, under Add Controller, the drop-down menu now shows we have the MX6000 Pro and the MX2000. Those are multi-screen processors with built-in scaling and screen control. Very similar to how an E2, an Aquilon, or a Pixel Hue screen controller operate, but they have dedicated output boards just for LED. Give you an idea, because people always talk about pixel capacity, the MX6000 has 8 output cards. That each output card has 4 SFP slots. Each SFP slot is 10 data ports. So that equates to 320 output data ports, or in pixels, 208 million pixels.
Wow. Okay.
So we're not even in megapixels anymore. We're in whatever hundreds of millions of pixels.
Whole lots of pixels.
Whole lots of pixels.
Okay.
So that's the very first piece of hardware that this new software allows you to control. 1.2.3, the current version, doesn't talk to the MX6000. There are a few in the wild that have been primarily in installations, but moving forward, 1.4.0 VMP 1.4.0 is where you're going to be able to control those 208 million pixels.
Okay.
Next up, so they've changed the way the menus look. So I'm going to open up in here a single MX40, and again, this is virtualized, to kind of show where the menus and the desktop icons have changed. First, very simple thing. They've reordered the source and layout. So layout is now first because it's the first thing you do. Then the source menu is just next in line. One of the functionalities that has changed, and it's down here in the lower right corner of my screen. So the back of the MX40 has 4 SFP slots. Under the current software, that's 2 primary and 2 backup for a total of 20 data ports. There are 20 copper ports, just regular RJ45 Ethercon connectors on the back of the processor as well. With the new 1.4 firmware and software releases, you now have the option of increasing to 40 data ports. So you go to an all-fiber mode with the existing hardware, so no hardware change, but you now double the pixel capacity of a processor. That is key when somebody wants to do either redundant data lines off a single processor to do a 4K screen, or if you want to do higher color depth and you want to use a single processor. So now we have the capacity to do up to 12-bit color at a full 4K resolution in a single box.
Nice.
Can
I ask you one question?
Sure.
This may be very basic, but can you use the copper and the fiber at the same time in the box?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
And that has tripped some people up. That is true with the existing software and the new version. Once you have a single fiber receiver connected and the controller processor is talking to one fiber, it shuts all the copper ports off.
Okay.
So, and that is a good thing to bring up. I have some friends out on tour, and the tour had been designed with some copper outs and some fiber outs, and it was, nope, that's, you need to go all fiber.
Not going to be happy.
Not going to work. And now with the 40 data ports, the only way to access those extra ports is obviously only over fiber. So for owners and for renters of the MX40, plan on having 4 CVT10s instead of 2 with every MX40 to get the maximum capacity from the unit.
Okay. And there was one other thing that we were talking about.
Sure.
Projects.
Projects.
That's something new, right?
That is something new. So on the screen over here on the left-hand side, we now have a project menu. You used to have a menu where you could take multiple processors and group them together to give you control over multiple processors. Now you have projects. And I'm going to open up, again, this is a project. If I go into the screen group here, you have a master brightness adjustment and a master color temperature for every processor in the project. And then under this training project, I have multiple screens. So I have 3 different screen setups. And then under each of those screens, I have multiple processors. So it allows you to do widescreens and put all of the processors on a single screen on a single canvas. In this example, my canvas is not 16 by 9, it's not a rectangle, it's a Christmas tree. Under the training screen, it's 2 screens, just split by a small amount. And under this final screen down here, I have a KU20 processor. The one rule for processors and screens is all of the processors in a given screen have to be the same make and model. So I cannot mix MX40s and KU20s or MX40s and MX30s. They all have to be the same. Okay. But this gives us a way to control all of the processing on a screen, and projects gives us the ability to control multiple screens very easily. So I see everything at once, and I can see multiple projects at the same time. So if you're a install customer who has a physical plant with multiple LED walls around your plant, from this one page, you can see everything.
Nice tool to have in the toolbox.
Yes.
But, as we know, anytime you have additions, you also lose stuff.
Yes.
What's been removed?
So one of the key things that's been removed is Artnet control. So there is no longer Artnet control as an option. That is something to be aware of for rental customers, especially in the live event space, who were using Artnet to do things like fade the wall to black and recall presets and things like that. It is gone. The company was explaining there is a problem with implementing Artnet control in the MX6000 processing, and because of that, and it's a single platform, they had to remove it. It might come back, but for now, if that is a function you need, do not do the upgrade.
Gotcha. So beware.
Yes. The other thing that has changed, it hasn't gone away, but has indeed changed, is the API for third-party control systems, especially like Crestron control or even Stream Deck control from Companion. The API is changing The final release is not yet published, but I have strong feelings that because the current software will not import older projects, so if I built a project in 1.2.3, I can't import that older project. I have a suspicion that the API has changed substantially, so you're going to, at the very least, be recoding your Crestron control.
So if you upgrade, you run the risk of many, many man hours of reprogramming.
You do, that is a possibility. Again, the final API hasn't been published. The firmware software is due to be released on April 30th. So we are only a few days out from its release. I am not running a beta. I am running a published public version. I don't expect any changes in what I've been using and what the final release is externally.
Okay. So George, tell me this. I know that you look into this, every software release, you take a hard, deep dive into this stuff. What are the key takeaways?
Key takeaways. For an existing installation, do not upgrade in your production or live environment. Make sure in offline mode that everything is working. You are potentially going to have some reprogramming because of what has changed. For new installations, if you don't need the Artnet control, the new software adds features and functionality.
Okay.
If you need the Artnet control, use the old firmware. For rental companies, because the firmware for the hardware, so the firmware for the MX40 is a standalone file, and you can only have one version of VMP running on the control machine at a time, have both firmware versions and both installers available on whatever your control laptop that you provide is. If you're a freelancer, most freelancers carry all of them anyway, but in this case, you really need to have 1.2.3 and 1.4.0 and the 1.2.3 firmware and the 1.4.0 firmware, just in case there is a feature you want that isn't in the firmware on the box.
No gotchas.
Right, just send everything.
Gotcha.
Okay. There will be upgrades and downgrades.
Okay. Well, George, thank you so much for going into this. I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to want to jump on the latest firmware, everything that comes out, and then there are people that hold off, and this is all great information. If you want to see George or ask him some questions, he will be at InfoComm in June, InfoComm 2024. So George, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I have the title slide for my panel session. We're doing an educational session at InfoComm. It is Wednesday the 12th at 8:30 a.m. It's a follow-up to last year, so we do a panel discussion on LED screen color adjustment and calibration. So I bring in a group of highly experienced experts from manufacturing all the way to, so manufacturing, installers, and system integrators to talk about how to choose an LED tile, how the color space is determined at the manufacturing end, how to specify the color that you need. Color is becoming more and more critical in LED installations, and color space choices are achievable if you start all the way at the get-go. So the panel is an hour and a half long. It's one of the very first education panels on Wednesday, the day the exhibit hall opens, 8:30 to 10 a.m. And there's 5 of us together. That we did this last year. We were asked back by InfoComm and Avixa, so we're very happy to come back. And we're going to talk this year about what has changed in the last year, where color is going with the LED displays, and how to get the best looking LED display you can.
Gotcha. I was fortunate enough to sit in that last year, and I learned so much coming out of that. I'm so glad that I made it. And if any of you are in Vegas and you're able to go to Infocom, by all means catch George's panel discussion on that. Also, if you have any questions about what we've talked about here today, you can email us and it'll go to George or whoever. If you have, even if it's not about LED, but if it's LED, it's definitely going to George at solutions@evolvetechnology.live. Thanks for joining us.